It's a pleasure to be here, Emily and others. It's a pleasure to be invited again for a contribution to this great initiative. An initiative I'm already supporting for a couple of years now. And the other days, I gave presentations also on leadership development. So for those who actually are dialing in again, compare it to last year, probably I will mention the same stuff over and over again. But the session today is a little bit different because Emily is going to interview me, so she's going to interrupt me when I'm speaking too long.
To start with the first question, what's one word that you think describes great leadership?
Well, that's a tough question, by the way, Emily, because there is not one word. There is really not one word. And if I would choose one word, then it's about trust. So if you are able to establish trust with a team, if you are able to establish trust with the people you work with, then probably you have an enormous advantage. But great leadership is not only about having all the answers as well, because we need to understand that in a team, everybody is doing its part, his or her part. And for those who've been to the previous year of my presentation, I discovered something else as well about leadership. It's also about not only about trust, but it's also about courage. Because you can be a trustful leader, but if you don't have the courage to make the decisions to go forward, even unpleasant decisions, then you're not a good leader. You need to demonstrate that type of courage to take things forward. I described it last year also in the seven, how do you describe it again, the seven virtues. And I just like to mention them again as prudence. It's about judgment and wisdom. It's about justice, about your power, but treat it fairly. And the courage already mentioned. Temperance, so in the balance. And also the three other virtues came in from the Christian side, from Christian tradition, because the previous one came from Aristotle. But it is about faith, hope, and charity. So, in fact, these seven virtues create a full leadership, in everything. And the leader who's demonstrating this, specifically the one with the two words I mentioned, courage and trust, is the greatest leader. Because that is the person people want to follow. Not because the leader is telling them to follow, but because the people believe the person to be followed. And that's highly important.
Thank you so much. That was really interesting. So you've obviously built up years of experience helping organizations and learned a lot, like you just said, about trust and courage. So before we dive into the technical side of leadership, could you tell us a bit more about your journey and what led you to where you are today?
So I worked in all different kind of businesses for over 40 years. So what is then the journey? The journey is, all kind of experiences, see it from different angles. But the most important part of my leadership journey was actually to be engaged with the different cultures, to meet people around the world, to see it from different perspectives, to have that understanding. There is not one answer. It's always multiple answers, and meeting people provides you the answer. That's probably the key element I've learned during my period. The other one is that you're talking about business. You're talking about results, delivering results. That's important. That's the business, what it's about. I can do a lot of talking for 40 years, but if I don't deliver results, then, people will probably say he's paid, but he didn't deliver it. Exactly. So you are paid to deliver. And then the key message is you only can deliver results through others, with others.
Thank you so much. So through ESP, we focus on energy and sustainability. So the energy transition is often discussed in terms of technology, policy, and investment. Why do you think people and culture receive less attention than they deserve?
Yeah, that's the case. That's the case happening all the time. So we're talking about phrases. So I've met CEOs who use the phrase, "People are our most valuable assets of the company," and then they were firing them. Let me be honest on this one. You cannot do anything in technology or in energy transition without people. And of course, people and culture are not so tangible, and therefore it's easier to treat them as a no, not important issue. So you don't see it, but it is actually the glue. It's actually the how do you call it again? The bricks are creating the wall, but in between there's, how do you call it in English again, Emily? Mortar,
The mortar.
the mortar. So the mortar, it sticks all together. And also something important, if you're talking about energy transition, people are making use of it. So they need to believe you. They need to understand the message. So you can be technically brilliant. You can have brilliant investments, brilliant companies. You can have brilliant technologies. You can have everything brilliant. But when you don't have users, it's useless. So it's all about people. So in fact, people are not the soft side of it. People are actually the hard side of everything. Because without people, forget business.
So, as a follow up to that, do you think that the way to get people and culture more attention and for the focus to be on that is to show the tangible result of putting more importance on people in companies?
I like the question, but it's a difficult one because it is still very not. People can't see it. You don't see it. Of course, you can do a head count and then you know the number of people. That's it. But how do you count knowledge? The question, Emily, and for everybody else is, why don't we put people on the balance sheet, on the positive side of the balance sheet, because they're now on the cost side of the balance sheet? People should be on that side. If people are your most, valuable assets of the company, then you need to treat them that way. You invest in people, and then when you're investing in people by education and reward and etc., then they will provide, their brains, their knowledge, their invention, etc., for the company's benefit. There is a famous phrase I'd like to tell you. That's a very important one. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. So if you don't have the culture right, you can have magnificent strategies, but it doesn't work.
Thank you. So, when organizations focus on technology and processes rather than people and culture, what do you see happening and what gets overlooked?
Yeah. Well, it's actually related to the previous question, isn't it, Emily? I think it is underestimated to look at the people side of the business. Too often, in a lot of companies, even in my own companies I work for, very often, the accountant has more power because he's talking about the number. And so why is the accountant more empowered than the person who is taking care of the people? So, first of all, it's about understanding, taking a look. Now, people don't over. It is overlooked actually to take care of people. If you treat people like numbers, then people will treat the company also like one number. So I like this very much in Shell, where we were working in, of course, in a high performing teams, and very often it's about capacity. So do we overlook capacity? No, our capacity is something you can measure. It's your brain power. That's your capacity. The capacity to do something. Capability in there. Achievement in there. So these are words, sound soft, but very often overlooked. But in Shell, they didn't, by the way. They had the three words. Capacity, achievement, and another word was collaboration. So the collaboration. And do we very often we don't see them, and that's happening a lot. And another thing I like to mention as well, because it's important, it is very often not seen, is the psychological safety, so that people are treated with respect. So, is it difficult? Apparently, it's difficult for a couple of leaders and managers in company to see the people and to appreciate the people and to respect the people, what they can contribute, instead of just looking at the numbers, instead of only looking at the money. I saw examples of companies who made very good cost-cutting operations. They cost-cutting operations because, the business was not doing so well, so therefore they were cutting costs. What they did was they cutting people cost, and therefore people left the organization. And an interesting example: most of these companies went bankrupt because people left. Yes, but if you treat them with respect, you you trust them. If they trust you, if they want to follow you, then they work very hard to make the company a success. Imagine the following: when people work only 8 hours, they will earn their salary. When people are enjoying their work, they go to work whistling because they like it, and they work for 10 hours in average. Then they are contributing to the profit of the company.
So moving on to the next question, you mentioned respect in your last answer.
Yeah.
What else do the very best teams that you've worked with consistently have in common?
Well, in teams, there is something we need to understand. We very often we assume in teams that they know what to do. But we always need to re-emphasize with teams about what the task is they are aiming at, what they are doing. And that's an interesting. We did a test once with a couple of teams, and we were asking them, virtual teams, by the way, and we were asking them individually, can you mention the task of your team? And we got, if the team was 10 people, 10 different answers. But you need to have a complete commitment to the task. So shared understanding. Shared understanding is the key word number one. Key word number one. Shared understanding about how we work, what do we do, what are we aiming at, and also shared understanding about when do we celebrate. Which leads immediately to a point of communication, because the moment you have a shared understanding, you know what you need to do, you know what you are aiming for, etc., you are able to communicate. But also communicate in another way, saying, this is not right, this is right, we need to go another direction. So then you are talking in a very respectful way with each other. Even in conflict, you are able to communicate. Which leads immediately to the word key I mentioned at the beginning, Emily, trust. Because if you and I can talk in a straight, respectful way, in a shared understanding about what we want to do, trust. And there is a saying, also in English, I think, I hope, trust will come by foot and will leave per horse. That's a Dutch saying, but I hope everybody understands. It comes very, very slowly because you need to build it. But when you are dealing with mistrust, it's gone immediately. And rebuilding trust, difficult.
So you mentioned there the benefits and the attributes that the very best teams have in common. So moving on to the mistakes that people make, specifically in hybrid and virtual teams, because a lot of organizations, as even ESP, we work across multiple locations, multiple time zones. What are the biggest mistakes leaders make when managing virtual or hybrid teams?
So you're talking to the real expert. I'm not joking, but it's true. Within Shell, I worked with a team to create virtual team working. So we identified what were actually the mistakes, what were the success factors, what was, etc. By the way, what I just mentioned about shared understanding, communication, and trust comes directly from that work. But there are a lot of mistakes in there. You can immediately feel where it's going wrong. First of all, it's going wrong with the word technology because people are, yeah, they probably would say we have now the technology to talk. For instance, we can talk over here. We have the technology to talk. But still, even when we can see each other and you can see my finger aiming, then still there's a huge difference between this and working, face to face. So if you are thinking that technology is covering everything, that's the first mistake. So yes, virtual working will give you the opportunity to have less travel, working across borders, etc., etc. But in Shell, for instance, our recommendation was to see as a team only once a year at least. Of course, it's for ESP very difficult, but in a company like that, we recommended it once a year. It's not about zero, because some managers thought zero. No, limited, but only once a year. And the one time a year, we didn't talk about work. We were going to the beach in the Netherlands, or we were cooking together, much more informal. And that's a lot of mistakes people make when they are working virtual anyway. So the second mistake. Second mistake is that people think, and they're talking always about work. But we're missing something vital. When you are at work, the first thing people do is going to the coffee machine and having a chat. How was your weekend? How are you doing? And by the way, Emily asked me about, how my weekend was, so she did it. But that is, in fact, highly important for a team. So through business meetings, for instance, 60 minutes, let's limit it down to 50 minutes and 10 minutes, checking in how everybody's doing. It's about the psychology of human nature. We want to be connected and to be seen. Then, for instance, what we were using in Shell is a virtual table. Of course, we now can see each other's face, but actually I was drawing on a piece of paper all the names of the people in the team. I write them down and across the table. So I could actually go around the table and saying, Emily, what are you thinking? And by the way, across you is sitting Dia, and because on my table. So everybody was drawing that table, which makes identification highly important. Okay, and then of course, that's another big mistake is about not understanding time zones, the language, the culture, etc. And the time zones is highly important. For instance, now we're talking about 5 o'clock, a little bit later than 5 o'clock. But within Shell, when I had teams in Americas, in Houston, in the UK, in Kuala Lumpur, and Europe, there was only one time slot for us to talk. And that was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And then you need to be careful about summer times here and there as well. So that was 8 o'clock in the morning in Houston, and it was 9 o'clock in the evening in Kuala Lumpur. And now we're coming into something cultural. When I was mentioning it to my team, and I said, we need to understand the culture of people in Kuala Lumpur, because they have more difficulty in saying no to the boss. There's a cultural issue. They were very happy when I mentioned this to them, because I recognize the cultural, downfall or pitfall you can actually have. And some managers were still able, really, as an example, to schedule team meetings with a team across the world on a Friday, which means the poor Asians were on a Friday evening, 9 o'clock in the evening, sitting in their office. Come on. So that's a big mistake. So understanding people is also understanding people across time zones, across the languages, and not everybody is talking English. Emily, you and I talk English, but I'm talking Dutch English and you're English. And by the way, that's a huge conundrum. No, and Emily understands the word conundrum. But I can guarantee you, Emily, probably 9 out of 10 people in teams, multicultural teams, from different countries. We're talking English. Emily, once you need to try it in a team, talking about the conundrum and then testing everybody if they know what the word is about. Because that's one of the words English use, Americans use, and the rest of the world are not using the word because it's too difficult. So I can say, if people now saying across the world, saying we have a conundrum on this rig, now I know what they have. Or they would say in the Apollo when they're going to the moon, we have a conundrum. I know now what a conundrum is. Okay, examples.
So, a follow-up question on that. How do you suggest leaders find out and learn more about the cultures so that they're able to apply it to their teams that are international?
Hey, that question is not on my list. Oh, free format. How? I would say the most important item in there is, Emily, is curiosity. Curiosity. Ask the questions. If somebody is using a word like conundrum, I should not be afraid to ask the question, what do you mean by that? Don't assume that everybody is the same. Don't ask just the question, even when it are silly questions, but they're respectful silly questions. So how are you doing? How are you talking about this? What do you mean by that? And don't think that everybody has an air conditioning in house. But people, for instance, a lot of mums in Africa, they're cooking on wood. And say they're cooking food on wood. And Emily, you're cooking probably on gas. And probably you're aiming to reduce the gas in the UK.
Yeah.
Yeah. But hey, the rest of the world is still cooking on something else, on wood. So don't assume that everything is the same, and be curious. And silly questions are allowed. So when I was in the Middle East, a couple of times, I've been there hundreds of times, and once there was a guy in his distache, white distache, and he was not walking like this, he was like this. And I was just curious, and I said, what do you have underneath? And he said, do you want to see? That's so funny. So don't be afraid that people are proud to demonstrate their culture as well. So they know that we are different. So we know we are different. Emily and I, we know we are different. Dia and I, we know that we are different. But the essence of everything is include the differences, embrace the differences, and be curious for the differences. That's how we deal with cultural differences.
Well, thank you very much for my sidetrack. I'll go back to the list of questions now.
It was your curiosity, Emily.
So, if you joined a leadership team tomorrow or today, and had only 90 days to improve the performance, where would you start?
Oh, probably you know the answer, Emily. Because I would start, 90 days sounds like a long period of time, but it's only 3 months. So that's a normal onboarding time. Probably at first I would start with clarifying what is the team about. So what is this shared understanding? Talk to every individual. Take 30 days for this, 1/3, and have that understanding. What is going on? Talking with customers. I mean also internal customers. What do you do? What are your thoughts? Etc., etc. And then the second phase, which is then the second 30 days, I probably would bring the team together virtually or maybe face to face, and having that type of understanding with each other, that type of conversation. Of course, you don't need to use all the 30 days, but in fact, that's the phase you are building in. And then the final 30 days, I would agree with everybody on what I call a heartbeat. And a heartbeat is that is the rhythm of the team. That's the rhythm of the meetings. That's the rhythm of understanding. That's the rhythm how we deal with each other. That's the rhythm of the actions, milestones. When do we are talking about milestones? When are we doing this? When are we reporting? When are we doing this? When are we team meetings? And the heartbeat is probably in teams a very important word. People need to understand. Give you one example also. Virtual teams, if you don't develop a heartbeat in the virtual teams, they got lost because they need to know every time. So, for instance, every Monday at 3 o'clock scheduled, we have a meeting. Heartbeat, ding, ding, ding. And that's how it is developing. But by the way, 90 days probably is not enough, or maybe it is a good start. But it's a good start. Yeah. But you notice what I did also in this example is making use of the word shared understanding, communication, trust.
So you've obviously shared a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge that you've gained throughout the years. Can you share a challenge that taught you an important lesson about leadership?
Well, Emily sent me the questions up front, so therefore I could prepare myself. And it was the most toughest question, to be honest. Because, yes, there are setbacks. And in 40 years, probably I had a lot of setbacks. Probably about 40 times at least, or every year one. Or maybe multiplied by months. So then you have 40 times 12. That's a lot. So, no, life is, and teams and leadership is not easy. So let's. I need to mention something about leaders. When there are leaders in organizations stepping forward, say, "I'm a leader, I can do it, easy," it's a liar. Leadership is about tears. It's about pain. It's about scratches on your soul. Now, when is this happening? Well, when people are not delivering, when people are not trustful, when people are not communicating, when people are stabbing in knife in your back, when people are, or when the money is gone, or when you have to fire people, or having that type of performance conversations. That's a scratch. And the question you could ask Emily now is, did I cry it once? Oh, yes. I remember that I cried once. That I felt alone as leader. The team was in a kind of a mood for a different direction. I felt totally alone. So I went to the loo and I cried over there, or at least I had tears. Did it created or made me a better leader? I think so, because you need to feel it. You need to understand that leadership is not about the one who is always know right, but it's the servant leader. The servant leader is delivering results through others, which makes you the conductor in an orchestra. And when you are doing right and everybody is making good music, and sometimes things are going wrong and everybody is making awful music, and who's to blame? The director. Yeah, that's it. Conducting an orchestra.
That's a good way of thinking about it.
Yep.
So looking back as well, has there been a project or transformation, I know you've talked about your work with Shell, that you're particularly proud of, and what made it so memorable?
Yeah. Yeah. There are actually a lot. So over 40 years, you can have all kind of projects which you are very proud of. So when I was in Randstad period, I was the VP of learning, so head of department, big team, all female, by the way, which was the challenge. Yeah, and then because they also had kids, so on 5 o'clock in the afternoon, everybody was gone. Like, hey, we need to pick up the kids. That was a challenge. But I created there with a team what it was called an academy, multiple academies, and still have the examples. I'm still using the examples of what we did. We did clever stuff on supply and demand of delivery of external suppliers, etc., and money wise, etc. Fantastic work. And then I went to Shell. I've dealt with virtual team working with the team. We created a new approach to virtual team working, but also on the rationalization of portfolios. So slim down all the projects and all the courses we had. But most proud I'm of Commercial Academy, because Commercial Academy was a new vehicle in Shell. So we created an academy for which senior leaders were lining up to attend the course on commercial deal making. And we're not talking about small deals, we're talking about big deals. So we had potential participants who said, I'd like to join as well in the academy with all the features and courses, etc. And so the question was, what's your deal size? And when somebody said, wow, big deal, 100 million, we said, too small, at least 500 million, you could attend. So, but that's a big company, big projects. But also small things, So I've traveled all around the world for Shell, but also went to Oman, where I was helping in social investment programs to deal with programs for the local communities, which was fun to do. And where I was asking the silly questions, understanding cultures, but also helping out country chairs, senior levels to the EC, to the executive committee members. I was dealing with them and I was serving them. And when I went to Gazprom, that was an interesting period, I have to say. I'm very proud of what we achieved. On the other hand, I'm a little bit sad because it was in vain, because we worked for mutual understanding of cultures, of Russian culture, Western culture, etc., and making a good connection. Having the Russians in Gazprom to learn on the Western side. And it's in vain because it's all dropped out. But I need to tell you one thing, which was maybe during the period, which is still a spark. Proud of. Because during COVID time, we could not deliver anything. I was at home, and then one day when I was under the shower, I thought, let's create webinars. So I created webinars. I've done on a heartbeat, Emily, twice a webinar a week for the whole period of COVID. I had an subscription in Zoom, which allowed me to have 500 participants. The biggest number of participants I had was 480. They came from all over Russia, all over the world, from Bolivia, Vietnam, South America, everywhere, including Russia. And then suddenly I got a message from one guy in Siberia. And he said to me, in Russian, of course, he said, I'm sitting here in Russia. I'm an engineer, and I need to take care of some assets over here in Siberia. Now with COVID, I'm disconnected. I'm sitting here on my own. Now with this, Rob, your Zoom message and the presentation, so the topics I provided, he felt connected to the world. So now we're coming back, Emily, with another tear in your eye. So because it's not only about sadness, which created scratches on your soul and a tear in your eye, but this created also another tear in this eye about that I was very proud to serve this young individual to be connected to the world. I delivered about 200 webinars with friends. So, yeah, I think I was very proud about what I always did, but it is through the word of respect, no judgments, and it needs to say the travel, the exposure to all the different cultures in the world makes it, or is it the word relative? What is the word that it is not absolute, Emily? It's relative.
Oh, relative.
Yeah, relative. It's more relative. So the travel, it provides you the exposure to the cultures, provides you to be more relative to everything which is happening, to see it from different perspectives. And that's probably also why I could celebrate what I've done and what makes it very memorable.
Yeah, all of those projects sound really interesting, and your webinars are a fantastic achievement.
Yeah, fantastic. It was really fantastic. Yeah, yeah.
So moving on to the next question. If someone is technically brilliant, they have a lot of knowledge about the technology, the processes, which is important in energy and sustainability sectors.
Sure.
But they struggle with the people side of leadership and teamwork. What advice would you give them?
Yeah. Okay. Very simple. Don't try to become a different personality. Probably key message number one. Don't play the role of manager. I see too many people who are trying to be something else, suddenly being a manager, suddenly to be somebody who's telling others. No, it is more about you can be technically brilliant, fine, but it is about understanding what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses. I would say self-awareness is the second part. So don't try to become a different personality, and self-awareness is probably very important. So it's not about become very loud. So you can be technically brilliant, and then people say, "Oh, a leader, you need to be loud. You need to speak loud." So from changing an introvert into an extrovert, no, because technical people, sorry for saying this, but sometimes it's true, are a little bit weird as well. They're a little bit techies. Okay, but be brilliant techie and don't like to become somebody else. Oh, Dia, I made you laugh. But it is true. And it is, it is about that you can be humble and silent. And that's the strength. The strength is brilliance, not with a loud voice, but brilliance by being yourself and speak out when you want to say something. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Was it perfect?
I enjoyed that answer.
Okay, good.
I think it would be very helpful.
I just would like to add, Emily, sorry. Yes, the one about technical guys many of them are a bit nerdy. Yes, I completely agree, speaking from my background.
No, but Dia is true. So. Let me take Dia as an example. We know him, already know him for a couple of years now, and he is totally himself. I never said to Dia, for instance, become somebody else. In Shell, I met a brilliant female young engineer, and she was sent to me because somebody said you need to give her a little bit coaching. And she was brilliant. So we were talking, and I was analyzing, and we were talking, and I was analyzing. And I said to her, but I noticed that you are totally blue. She said, yes, blue. And I said, why did they send you to me? And he said, because they want you to become red. Yes. And so I said to her, my best advice to her was, never try to become red where you don't like red, but stay blue and make blue much more brilliant than ever. So she left Shell. Was that a good coaching advice? I think yes. Because it's about respect for the individual, not to become somebody else, but playing to your strengths in what you are and who you are.
Just to help anyone who perhaps hasn't heard of the terms blue and red before, could you explain what they are and perhaps the characteristics of the two of them?
Sure. It's already used for probably centuries. Psychologists, Plato, Aristotle, whoever tried to understand people. And most simple way to express this is the three colors: red, blue, and green. Red is a little bit more impatient. Red is a little bit pointing, is aggressive, is fire, is come on, let's do it now. It's also very expressive. Green is a little bit more soft. It's a little bit round. It's round and it's touchy and it's let's have a coffee first. Talk. And blue is let's keep it a little bit distance. Let's think through before I can answer. That's a very brief explanation of the three colors. And these colors you can put on people. You can recognize red people who are a little bit time. You can recognize green people. Oh, it's already 2:00 at night. It was so nice and cozy over here. Or you recognize also the blue people. Let's think through. What you said exactly? What was exactly the phrase again you were using? So that's blue. So you can understand most of the technical people very often are bluish. A lot of marketeers are reddish. A lot of social workers are greenish. And by the way, forget about it because it's always a combination in people. But it helps you to identify. Okay?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Good.
So, many of our audience are students or early career professionals interested in sustainability and energy. What skills would you encourage them to develop beyond technical knowledge?
So what I said about, understanding your personality is about whether you are in color. That's actually saying something about your character. Besides of that, then you have your technical knowledge, and then, so for instance, you're creating your contribution to sustainability or other projects, and I've heard the projects of last year, ESP, brilliant projects, by the way, brilliant. I still remember them. I'm still using them as examples when I'm talking about this community, which I really encourage and support. But first of all, and maybe nobody is surprised about it, first of all, I would say develop next to your skills, technical skills, develop the ability to work across the boundaries, having that understanding about the differences, which means that nothing is absolute. It is more relative to your answer, understanding that people can see it from different directions, that people see it from a different opinion, people see it from a different angle. So that's something we need to understand. So there's also the matter on energy and energy transition. So Emily and I am from Europe, so we have Extinction Rebellion. I never saw Extinction Rebellion in Africa. They don't understand this in Africa. They want to have the gas because, gas cooking is much more cleaner than wood cooking. Okay, so that type of understanding is highly important. Yes, other capabilities are, of course, critical thinking. Don't believe everything people are saying. The communication already mentioned, cultures already mentioned, ethical judgment, but also understanding how you are learning. Be curious, understand what are the different viewpoints. But first of all, probably is the word to develop next to your technical knowledge is self-awareness. Know your strengths. Be honest to yourself. Find your blind spots. And also try to understand the effect you have on others. How to create self-awareness? Well, don't sit on your chair and think about self. That's not your starting point. Self-awareness starts with communication with others. Sometimes you ask your friends, "Hey, how do you see me? What do you think about how do I communicate?" You can even practice this. Don't think that I'm talking silly stuff. I've done this with my wife. When I had difficult conversations, for instance, with teams, I was practicing with her. So I said to her, "Imagine that you are," and she gave me feedback, which created a lot of self-awareness, because then suddenly you realize how you come across for other people, which is direct feedback. So I think when you are dealing with that self-awareness, besides the critical thinking, working across boundaries, etc., then you can achieve something, because then you know your leadership style and you know how to head forward, you know, to listen to people, you know, to help them that they are following you through.
Yeah, so
More
I'm
career
thinking,
advice. Yep.
I think that was really good advice. And moving on to a bit more advice before I open up questions, if anyone wants to type them in the chat while I'm asking and Rob's answering this last question. If you could give yourself one piece of career advice, your younger self, what would it be?
Difficult to look backwards for 40 years, of course. 40 years ago, I was a total innocent young guy, you know, had no clue. I was just doing the things I was doing. So probably my career advice would be the same. Just do the things you like to do. Don't pretend that you are better. Don't pretend that you know better. Don't pretend. But on the other hand, besides of that, besides of being open-minded, stay ambitious. I was ambitious all the time, and not ambitious as a rooster, you know, shouting and making noise, etc. But being ambitious with the team, with people, trying to achieve something. And I think one important lessons I learned maybe over the last 40 years is that only in my first job I applied. For the rest of the jobs following through, I was always asked. So how is it possible that a guy of 55 at that time, or 56, I was asked to become a director at Gazprom, which is a Russian company. They didn't invite me because I'm just a nice guy or technical guy or whatever knowledgeable guy. It's because I've done something which is highly important, is taking care of relationships, taking care of communications, taking care, and of course, being ambitious. Which actually immediately provided me now the word I like to mention, because it's key word for everything: stakeholder management. Don't talk about networking. It's a stupid word. Talk about stakeholder management. And if you want to know what stakeholder management is about, I can send you an article, because it's key for your success. I discovered stakeholder management halfway my career. If I would have known it at the beginning, probably, maybe I had a different career. I don't know, but stakeholder management is probably key, because it's dealing with other people, understanding relations, how you communicate, what is your task, what is your ambition, etc. So I would like to ask everybody online also, what is your mission? If you would meet me in an elevator, what is your elevator speech in 1 minute about yourself? You need to be very precise. Okay, Emily, there is one final question, or not?
Yeah, sure. And if you could send me that article, I can share it, and we can share it on LinkedIn.
Good. By the way, on LinkedIn, but people can go to my LinkedIn site. There are a couple of articles on my LinkedIn site, also about leadership, by the way, and also about ESP, because there are some contributions from ESP last year, which is actually over there. So as a summary, because what I've done at that time, I've made a presentation and all the slides I put in ChatGPT and created an article. No, not immediately. You need to do some work.
Dia, do you have a question that you'd like to ask? Feel free.
Yeah. Hi, Rob. Happy to see you
Idea.
again. So, firstly, let me thank you for this amazing interview discussion. Really insightful. So, I'm happy that we are recording it and hopefully we'll publish it for YouTube, let's say for public, to learn more about this type of knowledge and experience you are sharing, because it's not something like a lecture. It's like based on your experience in different countries, with different cultures. So, really very insightful session. Thank you for that, and thanks Emily also for hosting it and for the questions. So I have one small comment, then I have a question. Firstly, who is this interesting guy in the background? First time to see him in the picture.
Oh, you mean that
Behind
one?
you. Yeah.
Tintin.
First time to see it.
That's Tintin. Hey,
Uh,
and Dia, you notice this?
is it medals you took or what?
Yeah, medals from
Oh,
running.
really?
Yeah, that's including my 3 marathon running medals.
Wow.
Yeah, this one is probably the most nicest one medal.
Looks, yeah, unique.
It
And
says
for,
that was the marathon on Hawaii.
oh,
Oh,
that looks really unique.
yeah. And what that guy is Tintin. It's a comic strip.
Uh, so
Ah,
I believe you ran more than me.
I only done 3 marathons, Dia.
Mm, it's motivating me to start run as well.
I did my first marathon when I was 50, Dia, so you have still
Oh,
time.
okay. Okay, I will continue sleeping until I become 50. Then start running.
Yeah,
Really great, Rob.
yeah,
Um, so I have, yeah, one small question, because really one of
yep.
the items that took my interest during your session speak is that try to be yourself when you are a leader or while you are working. So I would like to ask, how can we, or let's say, how can we combine between trying to be ourselves and trying to improve our skills, let's say from reading some books about leadership or taking some courses, because through some of the courses or books, for example, this 48 laws of power, it's really nice book. Um, but for example, when I read from it sometimes or some pages, it is trying to make me a different person that is not who I am. So I would like to
Mhm.
know from you, how
Yeah,
can we combine between improving our skills or learning
yeah,
new skills and being ourselves?
yeah. Okay, okay. I think I have an important answer to that one. When I was doing this session with Emily, asking the questions, I was not talking about books. I was talking about my experience and my observations and the things I've done. I also mentioned something important. I was practicing with my wife when it was difficult, for instance, some performance conversations. I shared also the fact that sometimes there are tears, yeah, happy tears and sad tears. That's leadership. Leadership is about experiences. And why shouldn't we be curious for other cultures and asking questions about what do you wear underneath, which is a silly question. By the way, don't ask it everywhere. But it is the question about curiosity. And the curiosity is, what is in your mind? But the curiosity is also, asking question on Emily. Emily, how do you think I was doing? And not only about yes or no, but more like, provide me a little bit more clarifications, etc. It's very simple, a very simple item, and that's creating self-awareness. One caution mention. Well, I'd like to mention something about books. Dia, there is something wrong with a lot of books. And why? Because this is American literature. Most of the management literature is coming from America, from the US, from the country of Trump. And of course, Trump is not America. But the thoughts is a very Americanistic way of thinking. It's not a UK thinking. It's not Egyptian thinking. It's not African Kenya thinking. It is American thinking. Of course, there are good examples in there, and of course, we can learn from it. But never underestimate the power you have from yourself and your own culture, and be proud of it. And don't try to become an American, because you're not. Dee and I've done also a session once about negotiations, and I mentioned the same about intercultural negotiations. But be more modest, because what I think, and I really believe, is that leadership is not about being obeyed. Leadership is about being worthy of being followed. So therefore, you need to be something else. You need to be self. Somebody is truly self. Because when you're truly self, then people want to follow you. And they would say, I like to work with this guy or with this girl. Brilliant ideas. Good communicator. I hope, Dia, this was a good answer. Oh,
Yeah, thank you so much, Rob.
so skip the books, Dia. No, to be honest, let's be honest here around this table. If you look at management literature or any other stuff, a lot of this is coming from a different type of culture. Of course, there are good things in there as well, but not always.